Alright guys, so in this video I'm bringing down two legendary bikes that we all heard of. Of course, these are introductory trail bikes, the Honda CRF230F and of course the long loved Yamaha TTR230. Now I've ridden both of these bikes on quote unquote real trails, tested their limits, especially with that TTR230. I'll talk about that a little bit more, and learned exactly more or less where these bikes shine. Now they're very close in comparison, and it's a little tough to determine each bike in their own separate category. If you're looking for an old school, low maintenance trail machine that just gets the job done, this might be a great comparison that you guys are looking for. Now let's just talk about the quick specs. Engine, performance, we'll go over through the rundown. Both bikes run a 223cc air-cooled 4-stroke engine with a 2-valve single overhead cam setup. Super simple, low maintenance, and of course long lasting. On paper they both crank around anywhere between 15, 16, 17 to up to 18 horsepower depending on the year and the dyno chart. I looked up some of these dyno charts and we got a little bit of mixed numbers and stuff like that, but it almost seemed it was around 17, 18 on average. The CRF230F, from what I've seen, peaks around 16 to 18 horsepower, and the TTR230 tends to fall more or less in the same range as well. But it's not all about horsepower numbers.
This is definitely an aggressive play bike, I would say. It's like an aggressive exploring bike. I don't know, it's like a category in its own. I feel like it's like the TTR230, but it feels like it's more aggressive in a way. It's still a beginner's bike. I mean, 230s, that's a good entry-level bike to learn on. I mean, I'm having a lot of fun on this stuff. This thing is not disappointing, even coming from like a 2-stroke.
The CRF runs a 65.5 millimeter bore and a longer 66.2 millimeter stroke, which gives it a little bit more of a low-end grunt advantage. That long stroke makes it great for climbing and crawling through those tight terrains. The TTR230 uses a wider 70 millimeter bore and a shorter 58 millimeter stroke paired with a slightly higher 9.5 to 1 compression ratio. That gives it a little bit more of a rev happy feel. It feels snappier and more responsive. Best way I can describe it is like the KLX250. It likes to be a little bit more in the revs, while the WR250R has a little bit more of that trickling low-end grunt. And when I say snappier, I don't mean aggressive, twitchy like high-performance enduro bikes. It just feels like the TTR wants to be more in the mid-upper revs more often. The CRF230, though, felt like it had just a bit more usable power overall, especially down low. That torque came in handy on climbs when I kind of messed up on a line. The CRF definitely helped me recover without needing to feather the clutch much.
Here's the other one. I don't see how it feels.
Honestly, the CRF230 felt a little quicker too. Keyword is felt. The specs say they're nearly identical, but in real world riding, that torque I think makes just a little bit of a difference. Now let's talk about weight and handling. The CRF230, the Honda, weighs around 248 pounds wet, while the TTR230 is around 251 pounds. So the CRF230 is technically a hair lighter. That said, the CRF230 feels slightly more top heavy, mostly due to its taller tank and seat design.
So the CRF230 versus the TTR230, take it for a grain of salt, but to me this feels a little bit more peppier. And keep in mind, I did buy this bike used. It's a real world test. Let me go on the high side here because the land is like this. Again, I'm not very good at this. Definitely lower than the cross trainer too. uphill. So the wheelies, I feel like I could do them easier on the TTR230. Yeah. I'm trying to clutch and hold it up. Again, I'm not good at this stuff. It's just for demonstration. I feel like the TTR230 might be better in wheelies, pivot turns. Yeah, I'm gonna say TTR230. Whew, that was a workout in itself. TTR230 does feel lighter, but I feel like I can...
The TTR230 Yamaha feels more balanced and neutral in my opinion. It's definitely a bit easier to handle for the tighter turns and low speed maneuvering, but honestly it's not by much. But here's the weird part. When I was actually out trail riding, flowing through the trails, not really overthinking it, just riding naturally, the CRF did feel lighter at speed. It was easier to lean into the corners and felt more planted on some of the off-camber sections when I was kind of just flowing through the trails naturally. The main place I noticed the real difference when I was trying to lift the front end or work on pivot turns. The CRF230 for me had more weight up front and took a little bit more effort to bring it up. The TTR230 was noticeably easier to manipulate for those techniques. Now I'm not very good at doing wheelies or pivot turns, but I can tell you that the CRF230 had that delay, if that makes sense, of bringing up that front because of that weight, while the TTR230 for me felt a lot more comfortable. Now, quick dimensions, the CRF230 has a 54-inch wheelbase and 12 inches of ground clearance. The TTR230 is slightly longer at 54.5. I do notice that on my trailer when I'm going over through those wheel wells. And it sits a little lower at 11.6 inches of clearance. However, that little bit of extra clearance on the CRF230 Honda was useful on some little rocky sections that I took it on. I didn't get hung up as much versus the TTR230. I don't have footage of this section, but there was some areas I didn't scrape with the CRF230, and the TTR230 I kind of just scraped a little bit. Size-wise, both bikes are compact, manageable, and great for everything from tight single track to casual trail rides. I probably would go with the CRF230F if I have a little bit more enduro in my mind, meaning, hey, I want to try some of these rocks or something, or steeper climbs. Not to say the TTR230 can't do it, but if you want a smoother, easier to handle bike for tight trails riding or learning skills like wheelies and balance, I think the TTR230 is definitely hard to beat. The CRF230 felt like it had a little more power, especially down low, and despite the slightly top-heavy feel, it was surprisingly nimble once you got rolling. Let me know in the comments which one you like to take out on the trails. If you own either or, drop your experiences below and ride safe.